Hello and welcome to my channel, I Went to Lose Gaming. Today we will be comparing some of Eula's weapon options and seeing which ones come out on top. Now, you all have been asking for almost every single 4-star and 5-star Claymore for me to review. Guys, I know I'm a whale, but even us whales can't level all of these weapons to level 90 very easily. But do not fret, because I will provide my personal ranking for all of Eula's good weapon options, and that includes all the 4-star weapons that you've been asking for, as well as all the 5-star weapons that are currently out. And of course, it will all come with a lot of math as usual with my videos. In terms of in-game showcases, in this video I'll be showcasing the following weapons: the Prototype Archaic at Refinement 1, the Song of Pines at Refinement 1, the Wolf's Gravestone at Refinement 5. These three weapons will all be at level 90. Unfortunately, my Skyward Pride is only at level 70 because the Ascension material is on Friday. My Eula's stats are as follows. She has a ton of crit rate, so that way with Cryo Resonance, she has 100% crit rate. This makes it very consistent when it comes to comparing these weapons. I also intentionally lowered her crit damage, so her basic attacks don't kill the Regisvines before her burst explodes. If you're interested in a combo video for getting the maximum number of stacks with Eula, let me know in the comments below, and that might be the next video that I make for her. Now let's finally take a look at how much damage each of the weapons do with their bursts. The Prototype Archaic did an impressive 133,666 damage. This seems like a pretty solid performance, but since it's our first showcase, we don't really know how the other weapons compare. So let's see how the Song of Broken Pines does. The Song of Broken Pines did 176,995 damage, also with 13 stacks. This is a tremendous increase in damage for her burst. This increase in damage can be attributed to the fact that with the weapon's higher base attack, and with 36% total attack when its buff is up, the Song of Pines provides 500 more attack than the Archaic does, as well as bonus physical damage. But can we put the Song of Pines attack speed to use? In this clip with this specific setup, I was able to do a 14 stack burst just in the nick of time, which did 186,886 damage. With immaculate timing, Eula's fourth part of her normal attack connected before the sword started its explosion animation, thus providing it its 14 stack. Now let's try with the Wolf's Gravestone. Oftentimes with the Wolf's Gravestone, its passive does not activate, and without its passive activating, it did 173,972 damage. Now I'll do a bit of damage to the Regisvine, so that way the Wolf's Gravestone's passive will proc. And with the Wolf's Gravestone passive proccing, it did 218,971 damage. This is notably higher than the second highest damage in this chart. Finally, I have a clip of the Skyward Pride with the Adeptus Temptation. This puts Eula's attack really close to as if the Skyward Pride was at level 90. ended up doing 143,580 damage, which is still higher than the Prototype Archaic. Now let's try all these weapons with a ton of team buffs and see how that might change the results. Starting with nuking the Primo Geovishap with the prototype Archaic. I believe this clip had 13 stacks. I did not math this one out because it is a lot more complicated, but it clocked in at an impressive 632,176 damage, easily still one-shotting the Primo Geovishap. Now let's see how much the Song of Broken Pines at Refinement 1 does. $815,073 damage. I actually did do the math for this one, and it definitely had 13 stacks. So after all these party buffs, the Song of Broken Pines managed to do 28.9% more damage on her burst than the prototype Archaic. And finally, let's see how my Refinement 5 Wolf's Gravestone does. So is any of this practical? Let's take a look at my Constellation 0 Eula with these weapons in 12.1.1. Well, the Song of Broken Pines was able to cleanly one-shot 12.1.1. doing around 370,000 damage to the enemies. I highly doubt I managed to get the 13 or 14 stacks with this, but it was still more than enough to wipe out the floor. Next is the Wolf's Gravestone, which also cleanly one-shotted this chamber. Thanks to its passive being applicable here, the Wolf's Gravestone did 420 damage to one-shot everything, notably more than the Song of Broken Pines. Now for the prototype Archaic. Unfortunately, due to its much lower burst damage, it could not one-shot this floor. However, when it comes to damage, there is usually a way to do more of it. So if we add Bennett to our prototype Archaic team, now the prototype Archaic was able to one-shot this floor, doing 420,000 damage. I would have done this in more floors, but this video is already late and I wanted to get it out ASAP. I've also neglected my wife too much, so yeah, there's that. Now let's go into some concrete math to figure all of this out. I've updated my chart with the additional knowledge that we now have about Eula's kit and rotations. And after the update, most of the weapons are roughly the same in their placements. Let's start by talking about the 5 stars, in particular the 2 best contenders for Eula, the Wolf's Gravestone and the Song of Broken Pines. First of all, cosmetically speaking, I think the Song of Broken Pines looks much better on Eula than the Wolf's Gravestone. That aside, I personally think the Song of Broken Pines is a bit better overall. It's quite consistent at higher refinements to get 14 stacks. and on top of that, its buff is completely predictable and controllable. The Wolf's Gravestone's passive has a lot of problems with activating it when you need it. For example, in the earlier Primo Geo Vishap showcase, it was pretty impractical to actually activate its buff for it to one-shot the Primo Geo Vishap. However, there are many situations where its passive is useful, as demonstrated in the earlier 12.1.1 clip. So overall, I will give the Song of Broken Pines a 5 slime rating out of 5 slimes, and I will give the Wolf's Gravestone a 4.5 slime rating out of 5 slimes. Regardless, both of these weapons are unquestionably amazing weapons for Eula. Next, let's talk about the Unforged. The Unforged is a lot like the Wolf's Gravestone and is situationally better if you have a permanent and strong shield support. However, I'm not a fan of these weapons due to their restrictive team compositions as well as needing to build up stacks, so I'm going to give it a 4 slimes out of 5. An interesting thing to note about the Unforged is that with the shield and with max stacks, it performs identically to a Wolf's Gravestone when the Wolf's Gravestone's passive is not up. Next, I wanted to talk about the Skyward Pride. The Skyward Pride is an interesting and pragmatic weapon on Eula. Thanks to its vacuum waves doing physical damage, and thanks to Eula actually doing good physical damage, it's actually competitive in damage for the full rotation when you include the 8 vacuum blades from the Skyward Pride. Along with this energy recharge, I think the Skyward Pride is a great weapon on Eula, and thus I will also give it a 4 slime rating out of 5. Now for the 4-star weapons. Let's talk about the Battle Pass weapon, the Serpent Spine. With specific setups or shields, you can avoid taking damage with it, and thus maintain its uptime. However, it does have some annoying drawbacks, like needing to wait in Abyss for 30 seconds to get its stacks before starting the chamber. Nonetheless, thanks to its predictable and controllable passive, the Serpent Spine is a very reliable weapon. It also has crit rate as a substat, which is absolutely perfect on Eula, thanks to her crit damage ascension stat. On top of all of that, it is a fairly accessible weapon, comparatively speaking, to 5-star weapons, and you can affordably get it to Refinement 5 over the course of 5 months. With all that being said, unfortunately it is not free to play, and if you lose its stacks it becomes a very bad weapon. Nonetheless, I will give the Serpent Spine a 4 slime rating, because if you are able to avoid getting hit, then this weapon does incredibly well. But if you're not able to keep its stacks up at all, then I would give this weapon a 2.5 slime rating. Now for the 100% free-to-play friendly weapons, the Prototype Archaic and the Snow Tomb Star Silver. Both of these weapons are remarkably similar, but on cosmetics alone, the Snow Tomb Star Silver takes the cake. In terms of their performance, they are situationally better than the other. Overall, the physical damage multiplier is more valuable in a full team full of attack buffs for the Snow Tomb Star Silver. As for their passives, I'd say the Snow Tomb Star Silver's passive is better against enemies with cryo on them. Thanks to Eula's usual 10 to 13 second DPS windows, Eula can actually get 2 icicles on her enemies in one of her DPS cycles, whereas the Prototype Archaic's passive is better against enemies without cryo on them. Why did I personally use the Prototype Archaic in this video and in my previous video is because for future Claymore characters the Prototype Archaic is more universally good on them, and as a content creator I plan to use it to showcase future Claymore characters. But if we're talking about exclusively Eula, I would personally choose the Snow Tomb Star Silver over the Prototype Archaic due to its cosmetics alone, better scaling with a full party of attack percent buffs, and its passive being better against cryoed enemies. Now keep in mind that if the enemy does not have cryo on them, then the Prototype Archaic is probably overall a little bit better. If you run Fischl Beidou as your sub DPS core with Eula, you won't be able to keep cryo on the enemies consistently. Ultimately, both of these free-to-play weapons deserve a 3.5 slime rating out of 5. Now a couple more weapons worth talking about are the Royal Greatsword and the Black Cliff Slasher. I'm not a fan of the Royal series because as your artifacts get better, the Royal series gets worse. I do not recommend the Royal Greatsword and thus I will be giving it a 2.5 slime rating. Meanwhile, the Black Cliff Slasher's passive, while situational, is extremely powerful in the right scenario, allowing it to come close to 5-star weapon damage levels at Refinement 5 and with 3 kill stacks. Overall, I believe the Black Cliff Slasher is a very well-rounded weapon and deserves a 3.5 slime rating. Oh man guys, sorry this video took a lot longer to release than I anticipated and ended up being a much longer video than I would have liked. I have been neglecting my wife for way too long now, and I hope she can forgive me. So if you enjoyed this content and analysis, I'd really appreciate it if you subscribed, liked, and commented for the algorithm. I chose getting this video out to you guys over my wife for the last couple of days because that's how much you guys mean to me. Thanks for watching. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Win to Lose, signing out.